YouTube, how's it going? Captain DirtyBeard here. We are happy to be back. We're on a little bit of a hiatus there, but we are back, and I think we are back with a banger. We have Matthew Grant on for the newest edition of the Captain's Quarters. This week will be part 1. We will be releasing part 2 more than likely next week. It was a really long interview, so I decided to split it up just to, you didn't have to sit through like over an hour's worth of content in one sitting. Not that it's not worth it. Without further ado, we will be getting to that interview, but as always, you can check me out on Twitch every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday over down at the description below, and you can also check Matt Grant out in the description below as well. Without further ado, let's get to the interview. Why wrestling?
Oh, man. Why not wrestling? No, honestly, like, for me, it's been the biggest part of my life. For like my entire life. I can literally remember being a child, being in a high chair and watching pro wrestling. Between that and Spider-Man, I was set, man. There's just like memories upon memories upon memories. And this is even before I got into the business that like I can think of. Like I'm putting together, just to kind of put into context, I'm sitting beside it right now. I'm putting together like a really cool collectible shelf right now. And I'm putting together, and specifically, a Kurt Angle shrine where I like have a bunch of Kurt Angle figures. I have like all different eras where he was like World Heavyweight Champion, where he was TNA World Heavyweight Champion, where he was the WWF Champion. I'm getting all the different belts and shit. And I just kind of look at all of that. And I'm like, literally a lot of those figures represent my childhood because that is my favorite wrestler of all time. And like just that alone is like a huge part of me because like I spent so much time playing with toys. I spent so much time watching the product. I spent so much time traveling and going to shows. Again, this is all before doing the podcast and getting into the business itself. So for me, it was a no-brainer. As soon as I like found out that it was even a possibility, I'm a Hamilton grown guy, so, and I don't have a car, I don't have a license right now, which is something I'm working on because I know in professional wrestling that's a huge fucking thing. And
absolutely.
I'm slacking. I 100% admit it. I ain't gonna be the Brent Banks and wait till I'm like fucking past my 30s. I'm on it. I promise. So with wrestling, I was doing all of this already. So once I found out like there was a school in my city with the Hamilton Pro Wrestling Academy opening up, I was there first day. There was Battle Arts, there was Tyson School, there was Crossbody Pro Wrestling. There was a few other pop-up schools every now and then as well. But again, there was nothing that was actually local. Hamilton based. Exactly. So when Rip opened up the school, I was like, well, fuck, there's no question. I got to be there. So that's essentially how that started. But like even before then, like doing the podcast, I was going to all these independent shows and like seeing the quality of content we were putting out. And it was like, dude, how aren't people paying attention more to this? Like,
no,
the
honestly,
amount of,
like, that's like
the amount of talent.
Exactly. Like that was like almost like verbatim, like my first thoughts when I went to like my first like later Ontario indie show. I went to, I think it was one of the later fringe shows. I think it was Revelations actually that you're about to do a little watch along for.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, that was actually the first like more recent like indie show that I went to, and I remember I went there. I saw all the guys that were on the card, and I saw like Shane Saber wrestling, and I was like, "This is local. This is like this attainable, and these guys are this good." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I'm interested. Show me more."
So, and I was out of that prototypical guy myself, where when you think independent wrestling in the first place, you think, "Oh man, it's just that backyard garbage." Like 100%, I was that guy to start.
No,
so
absolutely.
For me to see that, or to have that perspective, and then to see the consistency of quality that was coming out from Ontario independent wrestling, I was like, dude, there needs to be a spotlight on this, and that's where Weekly Wrestling Podcast came from. And like it expanded. It got to a point, to be completely honest, where it was unattainable to keep it going because there was just so much going on between obviously me getting into wrestling itself, but like just with Ontario and Canadian independent wrestling growing as much as it did. It was hard, man, to keep track of it all.
No, absolutely, which is actually kind of perfect because that was actually the very next topic was WWP, Weekly Wrestling Podcast. before all this started, before Twitch, before everything, that's where you guys got your main start and your main footing in the Ontario indie business.
Yeah, man. The amount of things we were literally blessed to be a part of and have done through the podcast is like, I genuinely can't fathom it sometimes. The amount of work that went into that podcast, the amount of money that went into that podcast.
That's like, always one of the things at the end of the day, right? It's
dude,
how much money?
Like, so between Alpha One, fucking NSW, we were doing Smash for a while.
Yep.
Like, we were trying our best to help out with as many promotions as possible. And dude, between that, we were buying T-shirts and just giving them with the fucking wrestlers because we wanted to get our names out there. Oh, and then like
everybody in wrestling loves a free T-shirt. That's just rule number one, I think.
Yep. Anything free, fucking wrestlers would jump all over, man. And then like putting in the work between, traveling the shows and like doing the interviews, editing the stuff, the video content that we were starting to do. Like it grew exponentially to a point where I was like, especially with doing fucking shows on top of it, being a referee at that point now, I was like, man, I can't do this anymore. And like, it kind of fizzled out, which kind of sucks because like, I wish we kind of had that, I guess, farewell episode. And I think David and I eventually kind of taped something that was essentially that.
Yeah.
But like, I don't feel like we ever went out on the proper footing.
Fair. Never really got to like send it off how you guys wanted to, or like cap it off.
Yeah, and like we always had a plan of doing and reviving the Ontario Indie Awards too. That was done by Mr. Mello back in the day.
That'd be great.
And we never got the opportunity to do that as well, which kind of sucked because like I genuinely put a lot of effort into thinking about that, and like I messaged Mello and got the blessing and everything too. So like I was being serious about it, and I was gonna go get like I was gonna put the whole fucking bit into it, but it was just like, again, I got to a point where like it was me doing a lot of the work between the graphics and, again, the interviews and obviously the research that goes into the interviews because you don't want to fucking look like a jabroni. And just everything on top of it, it's just, it was hard to keep up with. David was working a lot more often and he was unavailable for a lot of stuff. And like, I was trying to recruit people, but like, a lot of them were really unreliable. So it was like, again, it was a lot of it was falling on to me. And I was like, it sucked because it was my baby, but like,
yeah, but it's a lot for like one person to handle.
Exactly that. Like I was okay letting it go because like we got to a point where like, I don't think there was anything else we could possibly have done. Cause like towards the end, I was getting bitter too with like, and I'm not even saying this in a negative way too, because I've said this before, like with people like Alicia popping up and like, I think this was around the time where like Ocho and Ortiz and like Straight Talk Wrestling and all these guys were popping up too. And like, again, all the power to everybody that was doing their thing. Fucking, they were amazing. But it was just like a lot of those interviews that we were fucking pressing for and we were trying for were going to different people. And it was really unsatisfying, and I didn't want to become that negative person either. Like I'm that person that will like retweet and share and do anything with like other podcasts because like fuck, that's where I started, man. So like the hustle is real when it comes to that shit. And it got to a point where it was just like there was so much popping up and like WWE was unattainable. Like I had connections through the company and like it still wasn't happening. So I was just like fuck it.
Yeah. There hits a point, I guess, at the end of the day. But still, like before you got there, like you got to like you were talking about on a stream the other night, you got to talk to some pretty awesome people in some pretty awesome places.
One story in particular that I like telling because it's like the most mind-blowing thing to me is having Tommy Dreamer bring us in for one of the House of Hardcore shows, the House of Hardcore show that went down in Niagara Falls. He paid for our hotel the night before. He brought David in because he had to work that day. He paid for an Uber for David to get from Hamilton to Niagara Falls on time.
Oh, wow.
He like gave us a whole VIP section. And like this was in coordination with the Mindio show as well. I want to give Mindy O'Brien a shout out because she was awesome throughout that whole process as well. but like it was fucking insane to be like surrounded by the people we were at that time, because that was one of our first big opportunities, and it popped up so fucking randomly. It was like through a Facebook message through our Facebook page, and I thought it was like the most ridiculous bullshit. I went into that like because it was a meeting that we had to do down in Stony Creek at their location, and I went into it with David. I was like, dude, like maybe we'll get fucking a little promo code or something, and like, but man, they blew it up to a point where like they were offering like a VIP section just to be like in the section with us, to be like listening to us do the commentary while the HOH show was going on. Like,
oh wow,
it was fucking insane, man. We did like a live podcast prior to, which my dumbass didn't know how to use Twitch back in the day, so the fucking broadcast didn't get saved. But like we interviewed like Moose, Mickey James, Tommy Dreamer, Eric Young. Like it was a fucking slew of people just on that day, and I remember just like being on the moon at the end of that weekend because of like the experiences that we had. And that was just one of the many weekends. Like we got to finally get in with Ring of Honor, and that's how I got to interview Kenny Omega, which is like the most fucking insane thing to see, especially obviously now.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, there was just I don't want to sit here and fucking put myself over, but it's just like shit, man. The amount of things that like were able to be done because of the hard work that went into that podcast was fucking awesome.
Oh, absolutely. And like you got all of that done before your first match too. So it's
before
like
I refed my first match.
Touche. Yes, before you refed your first match. And like that's like definitely helped you. I would say like in the very beginning, like getting your initial footing in certain places, because like you guys put in the work, and you guys showed in a lot of places in a lot of different ways that you guys are willing to actually like work.
Yeah, man. Like the amount of times that like that we as podcasters were there like fucking maybe hours before the wrestlers and staying hours after the wrestlers, like doing all the shit that we were doing, helping out with setup and tear down. Like we weren't just coming in and fucking bullshitting around. We were helping out as well. Like we were paying our dues as we were being podcasters too. So it was like that definitely played a huge role in like, you know, the welcomingness when we decided to actually get into wrestling.
Since we're still in the beginning half of your career, I guess we'll shift into winning the openweight championship and holding it for 371 days so early in your career, and like how like it like affected you, and how like everything that kind of came along with that.
So that was like insane to me. So that whole day was like the most nerve-wracking thing, because not only had I not wrestled 2 matches in one night, I was doing 3 in one night for one, and I was like a year into wrestling at this point, maybe a year and a half or so. So I was like nervous as shit. Not only that, put on the pressure of my mom was there, which she was at a lot of the early on shows when her health was decent. Not only that, my aunt and uncle on my dad's side of the family, who had never seen me wrestle before, who had never seen an independent wrestling show before, were coming to see their first show as well, which was really cool. So all this kind of wrapped up into one, plus the added pressure of obviously you want to perform well, you want to, especially being given the ball like that, you really want to be on your A game. So it was just like a huge day for me, and like,
and you had to wrestle 3 times that night.
Exactly. Like all of this just wrapped into one big ball. So I remember I found out, I want to say it was a couple months prior that this whole thing was coming together. And like when I found out, I was legitimately blown away. I was like, wow, like the fact that somebody's trusting me to give me the ball really meant like so much. Like prior to that, I had been Death Proof Youngblood champion.
Yep.
But like, if I'm being honest, I don't consider that a legitimate title run. And I say that because half of my reign, the fucking company was dead, so I had to book my own best of 7 to keep the title alive.
Oh, right, because you were defending it in other promotions.
Right. David and I were going to other promotions because, again, the company was dead at that point. So I was like, well, fuck, I just won this belt. I got to do something with it, right?
Yeah.
So like I didn't really consider that the most legitimate title reign, and all like thank you to Chad. Like he did a
Oh,
lot for me
absolutely.
in that sense. Like I have no ill will towards that whole situation. It's just when I look back on it, it's like I booked like half of my title reign. And that, again, being as green as shit as I was, I shouldn't have been doing that. But anyways, bringing me to the open weight situation. When that was presented to me, I was like, "Whoa, this is a legitimate ball." And not only being a main champion, but being a main champion of a startup promotion in a new city that hadn't seen me wrestle, or a lot of the people on the shows wrestling before. So
A lot of people, I honestly, I think a lot of people who were at that first show hadn't even been to like an indie show, period.
Yep, it was a very new crowd, and I welcome that. Like, I welcome the pressure of trying to engage a crowd that maybe not familiar with wrestling or isn't in tune with what's going on. Like, I love that shit, man. I really do.
Oh,
And that's kind
absolutely.
of like what those first PWO shows were really like before they, you guys just started developing a fan base and really developed like those solid casuals that were coming to every fucking show.
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely. But that's the funny
so
thing with like those fans too, because it's like still I think about like 80% of them, they like wrestling, but it's like they're not like the hardcore indie fan where they're keeping up with like everybody and every promotion kind of thing. They just kind of show up to the shows and they're like, oh yeah, this guy's cool, I like him, and it's like, okay.
Oh, I like booing this guy. I like cheering this guy. I'm having fucking fun. I'm buying some beer. I'm getting involved. Let's go.
And then in walks Matt Grant and boo.
In walks me and prepare all your fucking bleeps.
Yeah. That and just like 90% of the children just like they hate you now.
Oh my god, that one show? Holy shit, dude.
You're trying to cut a promo and you just couldn't like get out like more than 4 words because they were just relentless.
Dude, it was insane. I was like, oh my god, shut the fuck up.
You're like, I can't say that because you're a child, but like internally you're like screaming.
Oh my god, I'm like, let me just say what I gotta say.
Honestly,
I'm gonna go over my time. They're gonna hate me.
the kids at indie shows I find are the most ruthless. Like if they're under the age of like 10, they are like, oh wow, they're bad sometimes. Like not like bad, but they're
bombs,
like
man.
Verbally, like they're
man, dropping
surprise
some
you.
serious bombs. Oh man, I've had some fun ones. Like I've been on the outside at some shows and like just like doing my casual shit of selling it, and like some of the stuff that's been said to me. Holy. And then there's some kids that are just sweethearts.
Oh yeah. But just like in awe.
Yeah, that whole open weight title reign was really fun. Just kind of to dive through it really quickly. Like the BMD match, I don't know if we had if that was even planned before we did the tournament, or if that was something I had requested.
Think so. Yeah, I think it was something that you might have requested.
I think so too, because like BMD at that point was like starting to travel to the States, and like he was one of the guys that was blowing up, and like I wanted to make sure I got a match with him before he blew up.
Oh, that's fair.
And to this day, like I still haven't got to step in a ring with him, and it's been like 3 years almost to that match.
Wow. Yeah, that was March 2018.
There you go. We're a month away from that being 3 years ago. So,
wow.
That was one of the reasons why I wanted that match, and I knew we would tear it up too. Like we had an interaction in the tournament, and I could just tell from that alone that we needed to have a singles match. So I think it was like the day or two before my birthday too. So I was going into it like super motivated. I know we had like a weird ending with Shaw taking both of us out and everything, but like the match itself was fucking awesome. I look back on it, and sure, as a wrestler, you're gonna look back on your past shit and always complain about it, but like I'm very happy with that match, and that's a lot to him too. He's a great dude. He's a fucking amazing talent.
Absolutely. And honestly, like given a point, I think you guys were both each only in the business for like what, like a year and a half, 2 years?
Yep.
Yeah. And like you guys
he had a little bit more experience because he did a little bit more battle arts before doing the HPW stuff, but
that's fair. Yeah.
give him that little nod. But yeah, no, we were both hungry, man. We both were hungry kids that wanted to fucking kill it in the main event. And I think we delivered. Check that shit out on IWTV.
Absolutely. PW Ontario then, for 5 free days.
Boom. Yeah, I think moving on from that, I think it was the 4-way.
Let's see, March, and then it would have been July. So yeah, it would have been the 4-way.
Yeah, so that 4-way, I have a funny story about this. So I took barbed wire in that match.
Yes.
The crutch to the head, and it scraped my forehead like a motherfucker. I had scars for a good week, maybe 2 weeks.
I was still surprised that like you took that. Because like I'm sitting on commentary, right? So it's like I don't know like 90% of the little tiny things that are probably going to go down. So I'm just like, oh, okay, that's a thing.
Yeah, so it was pitched, and when it was originally pitched, I was anticipating just kind of and done. No, it was a and done, and I was like, like it kind of sucked, but I was like, oh, cool, like fucking, I did it once, whatever, fuck me, right? Yeah. So here's the fun part. I had a referee booking the next day for Alpha 1.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, because they would run the next day. Yeah.
Was pissed.
Understandable. His referees
totally understandable, dude. He's like, dude, you're supposed to be my fucking referee, and you're covered in scars like a fucking hardcore wrestler. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm an idiot.
Did you have to bump that day?
I think they legitimately avoided bumping me for that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken.
Either that or it would have to be like a direct head blow.
I did get bumped because fucking I took a bump from Ricky, if I'm not mistaken, and they kept fucking with me saying that Ricky was going to destroy me with a forearm because of the scars. If I'm not mistaken, that was that day. But no, it was a fun little weekend, and like I honestly, like, it is what it is. Like, I'm somebody that in wrestling that I always want to try something once, at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe not everything.
Not everything.
Like, I ain't doing no gusset plate bullshit or anything like that.
No, some of that stuff, I see that and it just makes me shiver.
Cringeworthy, man. But
yeah,
hey, you do you guys.
Kudos to the guys that do that, because damn, I can't.
That's my proverbial tip cap. Yeah, no, honestly, like, I did it once and I was like, whatever, I did it. It is what it is. So after that, we moved on to the Mark Shaw match, which set up for the cage match.
Yeah.
The
giant
that whole
random
thing,
hunk of wood.
Yeah. Yeah, for one, that was the weirdest thing. So like, I was anticipating a door, a table, like something. But then you guys busted that out, and I was like, all right, whatever.
Honestly, like, full disclosure, I think they like they were just like looking outside. I literally think it was just sitting outside of that. I don't even think it was the venues, because it was just like chilling outside.
Oh, it was just there.
It was just there. So they they just brought it in, and then honestly, after they put it outside there, I think it still sat there for like broken in 2 pieces for like the better part of a year at least. It just never got rid of it.
So like that got busted out, and I was like, okay, cool. And then I think it was, I don't know if it was before that match or after that match that we decided to do the double turn with Empire getting involved and with you guys doing the whole thing with Goodridge and Shaw. But that ended up happening, and like, holy shit, that kicked everything to a whole new level for like Empire. So I feel like we formed in April earlier that year. Yeah. And we were kind of like, I wouldn't say floundering, but like the main promotion that we did it with was No Limits Wrestling and Death Proof. Right. And both of those promotions were kind of MIA at the moment, or weren't running too often. Mm-hmm. So we were kind of like, fuck, like, we need to expand, like, we need to start getting out there. So when we pitched the whole thing with Empire and PWO, and like, it went as well as it did, and then it started really taking off with like the Jake match and like the Iron Cup, where fucking I almost died.
Oh yeah, with the ladder?
No. Justin Sane throwing me into a fucking turnbuckle.
Yeah, the
Good
the Alabama
God.
Slam buckle bomb.
Oh my God, man. That shit was like, I've watched that video. I genuinely can't tell you how 500 plus times.
I turned that into like the coffin dance meme thing because it was just it was too good.
Like, so some context, just like I'm gonna go back and talk about the Jake match because like that was really important to me. So when I found out I was losing the championship, especially to Jake, I was really excited because he had been working his ass off. He's somebody that I admire a lot, and he's somebody that like I was super happy again to drop the title to. So when I found out about that match and then kind of found out like the direction we were going in with it, I think, and again, that's one of those matches, kind of like the BMD match, where I look back on it and sure, there's some things where fucking you're not going to be happy with it, but the story we told in that match and the pop Jake got when he won the title,
oh, that was insane.
The best. Like I think up until that point, the best pop.
Because I think because that was you had because you had stolen the win and then the match got restarted and then Jake won. Yeah.
And the way we did that, I'm not gonna lie, at first I wasn't too keen on it. I thought we should have done the straight up,
just the clean finish
win. Yeah. But looking back on it now, I think it added just that extra element, especially with the addition of Parkside and that whole situation too. Like there was a story to be told, and it was like fantastic looking back on it. I was really happy with that.
Oh, absolutely. Because that was a way of us to like slowly introduce Parkside there and attaching him to Jake until he just decided that he wanted to wrestle again.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
So moving on to the Iron Cup. So I'd lost the championship. This was the first time in like a year and a bit that I was going into a show and not as champion. So it was a very different dynamic, especially being used to being champion, being used to being in that spot consistently. It's like, okay. And then it was the Iron Cup again. So found out I was wrestling 2 matches. I was like, oh, sick. Got to mix it up with 2 of the fucking best talents in Ontario. Shout out to PWO. Kobe Durst, just insane. My God, those 2 are incredible. That 4-way was really interesting. Like, so the Iron Cup dynamic in itself is very interesting, the way you guys lay that out.
It's almost kind of like an inverted. It's almost kind of like an inverted like tournament of death in a way, I think, or whichever one it is. Because instead of like starting and then leading to a 4-way, we start with the 2 4-ways, and then elimination out of that, and then there's 2 people that move on from each 4-way, and then they end up facing an opposing person from the other 4-way match in the semifinals, and then those 2 winners face each other.
But just you guys qualify the first round, like, so the way you guys, if somebody gets pinned, they're eliminated. It's not like if you get the pin, you're qualified. It's very interesting in that aspect, and that's like a little tidbit that makes you guys a little different, you know? Oh,
absolutely, because you can actually what am I looking for?
Set up stuff?
Well, yeah, you can set up stuff, but you can move forward in the tournament without even pinning anybody. Because just say like throw you and Kobe Durst in there with like 2 other people, and then just say Kobe Durst pinned both other people in the match, and then you just kind of got to sweet. I'm going on to the semis. Yeah,
that's a fun aspect too. Like, there's so many different stories you could tell. There's so many different like feuds you can set up going forward out of that too, without really having to do much.
So many different variables, and then especially with like we host like the qualifying matches too, even before the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, sure, the tournament has 8 guys, but then if you include all the qualifying matches to plant some seeds, there's like 16 people involved. Yeah. So
I'm gonna play interviewer for a second here and kind of ask you a couple questions with the Iron Cup that didn't happen. Was a lot of it the same ideas that is kind of transpiring on Foundation right now?
No.
Okay.
I'll be honest there. I don't know. I'll also be honest with, I don't know how much I can divulge on stream, but
no, that's totally fair. That's just, I
will say,
I want a straight up yes or no answer.
There has been variables that were supposed to be involved with the tournament that were not involved with the tapings due to whatever reasonable reasons between COVID, etc., safety. Absolutely. This was obviously the one time that nothing mattered. It was like, hey, you don't want to come, you don't have to come. That's understandable. We'll adjust. But yeah,
Exactly.
so some plans have changed. We're heading in a bit of a new direction, and personally, like, it's a crazy direction. It's gonna get gnarly.
Man. The product that they've been like PWO has been putting out lately, dude. If you guys have not been paying attention, it's fucking free on YouTube. So like,
That's
what are
true.
you missing out on? It's
can't be free.
It's the best price, free. Check it out. There's like 20 plus episodes up there. Goddamn. Yeah. But the diving back in where we were talking about the Iron Cup, going into that second round with Justin. So he had been wrestling a match after me, if I'm not mistaken. So there was that window where like I was a little nervous because we didn't have that much time extra to put together something.
That's
not
fair.
that I was like nervous in the sense of like Justin not being good, but nervous in the sense of like me fucking up.
That's fair.
So Justin gets back, we fucking throw something together. We go out there and like, honestly, a lot of the shit, and like, this is what I like doing now, kind of like pulling the curtain back with planning the match, is like kind of having a beginning, a middle, and end, kind of having like that little bit planned out and just kind of filling the rest in. Like,
yeah, like if you have like the tent poles, I guess, then you can just kind of like see where it takes you in between.
Exactly. For me, that's where I'm comfortable right now, and playing off the crowd is like a huge thing for me. Like, if you haven't watched my shit, that's me in a nutshell, man. That's so the Justin thing was very, very much a lot of improv, but like we had those certain spots, and he pitched that Alabama slam in the corner, and like I didn't even hesitate at first. I was like, yeah, man, no fucking problem. And he's kind of like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, no fucking, because like
he's one of the few people I would trust with that.
Yeah, and I'm also totally somebody where, again, somebody like Justin I'm going to trust, but like, if you're not somebody who's a piece of shit, and there's very few people that are on that list, but if you're not somebody that's a piece of shit, I will probably trust you to do more than likely almost anything. And so he pitched this to me, and I was like, yeah, man, no fucking problem. Don't fucking sweat it. And then I started kind of processing it in my head. I'm like, how am I taking this? So the way I ended up taking it, if you see it in the video and there's a picture of it, shout out to Shooting the Indies, I literally took it like a bump.
Yeah.
So I took the brunt of it on the back of my arms.
Yeah. Because you put them over the top.
The back of my arms were bruised to fucking shit for the next week. But head, everything was fine. David, if you watch that footage, JT Kirk, you watch that footage, he fucking sprints to me like a motherfucker when he sees that happen.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's like, yo, are you good? Because I genuinely remember him. He's like, yo, you good? I'm like, yeah, man, I'm fine. I heard the reaction of it too, and I knew it was worse. Like, it looked worse than it actually was. Yeah. So I sold it that extra little bit more, especially knowing where we were going after that, because I had to power bomb him, and there was that extra little bit more to the match. And I feel like, honestly, we should have just fucking ended it right off of that. Like, there was nowhere to go after that, man. That was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just the whole reaction of that and that whole match together, Justin was phenomenal. And then where we went from there with the whole Empire storyline, I think was like so much fucking fun. That's like the best thing I can say about PWO, especially when it comes to like pitching stuff and like being able to kind of freely do your own thing to an extent, of course.
Oh, of course, yeah, like, within reason.
Is like there's a lot of creative freedom, and that is fucking awesome. That is like, for me, that is amazing because I'm a very creative person.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I feel like PWO, when we put stuff together, it's very story driven, and it's very character driven. So it's like, you can only think of like general ideas. I think for people, it's really hard to like tell somebody like, you have to do this. It's like, but you can't, like, it has to come organically. It's like something like, take like Liam Worldwide, for example.
Oh man.
You can't just like, I don't know. You can't just take any wrestler and slap that gimmick on it, send him through the curtain and be like, this is what you're doing. And, you know,
so watching back that internet title match and watching
yeah.
that promo I cut on him.
Oh, when you
saying the
called him a
twink line,
twink?
oh my fucking God. I forgot about that. I was like, why did you guys let me say that?
Once again, I'm tied to the table, so when people say things, I'm just like,
I literally
okay.
cleared that with Andy too, and he's like, yeah, man, go right ahead.
We're like we're like that PG kind of PG-13 audience where it's like we kind of try to like test the odd boundaries here and there, see what the crowd's okay with, because they're okay with some stuff, but not some other stuff. That was funny. I will say that. Because
his reaction too, like it was man. Oh, it was so good. And
everything
like
about
that's
that.
some of the stuff, like when I've been given the live mic, when I've been able to like fuck with the crowd a little bit too. It's nothing makes me happier than being able to fuck with people.
Yeah. Especially like saying so little sometimes too. And it just makes it easy.
Yes, like I literally don't have to say much, and like I'm one of the most hated guys. Like I literally won most hated when we did the fucking awards, and I was like, unbelievable. And I think it was like legitimately by a landslide too, which makes me laugh like a motherfucker.
Oh yes, definitely. But like that's the thing too. It's like you have to treat it almost like a game of tennis. You can't just like continually jaw jack. It's like just let them rant and rave for like 2 minutes and then turn around and say like 2 words and it'll break them.
See, that's like a lot of my later promos in PWO. That's honestly what it became, was like the fans like taking up a lot of the time and me kind of saying what I needed to say, and fucking that was it.
You had no idea really the structure of this interview, but you're just taking this along great for me, and it's awesome. Segues upon segues.
Yeah, so real though.
We got Empire with JT Kirk and of course Crystal Moon, and potential others in the future. Really cool. Who knows? Because now that you guys have added more than the tag team, it's just kind of like you've reached that faction level, I suppose. So
yeah, there's a lot of growth. So
that door's open, I guess.
So we had the idea for a while of adding somebody, and we didn't know exactly who it was. And I don't even know if we've genuinely publicly said who we considered. So this is probably going to be a first time ever, because I don't think these guys are going to be considered later on because they're doing their own thing now. But at the beginning, we were kind of considering guys like Tyler Arrow and Mike Forte for that role. But then we were kind of like, not that they didn't fit what we were looking for, but it was almost that, if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense.
So, and then we kind of had the idea of like, oh, it'd be cool to add a female. Like we were almost thinking what the Riot Makers were doing previously with Jody, Wheeler, Albright, Stratos was eventually added. Yeah, like they were fucking tearing shit up. They were all over the place. And like, that's kind of the idea we had. So we were kind of like scouting a little bit with the female scene. And obviously we were at Crossbody quite a bit already with, being the tag champs. And I was even reffing at Crossbody prior to that.
Yep.
So Crystal Moon was somebody who popped up, and like, I hadn't considered it for a while, but like once I started considering it, it was like, that's fucking perfect. Like she literally fits our image exactly. Yeah. So, and she's an amazing human being. Like I'm proud to call her a friend. She's awesome.
This is true. Shout out Crystal Moon.
Yes. Shout out her. I miss her very much. But yeah, so when we came up with the idea of adding her into the group, you guys were the first to actually like take on the idea. So when we started pitching that, and then you guys kind of added the extra concept of us looking around for members for Foundation as well, which
that was a lot of fun.
Hilarious. We got some really good content out of that.
I love the one with because it's like, once again, like I wasn't down there when a lot of it was being filmed because some of it was happening during the show. So when I got like my camera back at the end of the day and I'm looking through it, I'm seeing like you talking to Space Monkey and all this stuff. I was just dying.
Yeah, there was one we did with Space Monkey. There was one we did with Chris Logan where he just flat out told us to fuck off, and it was amazing.
Fuck off.
Or fuck you or something. It was amazing. Like the bits we were coming up with, and like for me, that's a lot of what wrestling is and what entertains me with wrestling. Sure, wrestling can be like wrestling itself can be awesome, but man, it's the promos, it's the bits, it's all that stuff that keeps people coming back. Let's be real. It's the character based stuff that people remember
Absolutely.
at the end of the day. You can do all the 450 splashes, you can do all the moves at the end of the day, but it's that stuff that's going to keep people coming back. And that's the wrestler I'm becoming and I turned into over the past couple of years. And I think it's brought out some of my best work.
Oh, which is great though, because I feel like that's something like that's always, it's almost like future proofing yourself, right? Like if you want to go somewhere in this business, you're going to end up on TV. There's going to be those structures and those things. So it doesn't hurt to start thinking of how your character, your gimmick, or whatever you're portraying can translate into all those different scenes and those structures and different promos and how you can interact with all these different characters. That's why, honestly, I loved
100%.
like pitching when I pitched the idea to start Foundation, just like as something to connect the dots between all the live shows. And it's like, we need something that, I don't know, just like helps carry on the story in between matches.
Helps explains the characters more.
Yeah.
Explains the storylines. Like it's.
Yeah, because when you watch wrestling, it's just like you need some context in between. Not like you don't need it to be overdone, but that's why we try not to fill too much with the live show, right? And then throw it all onto YouTube. So it's kind of like you don't have to sit through it live too much of it. There's a few odd promos, but there's not like oversaturated.
No, it's great, man. And like the product that PWO has turned into when it comes to just like the transition from venues and the production transition and like the roster transition, like we're really, I think, finding a foot with what we're doing right now.
But yeah, to like get back into like the whole Empire swing of things with Kirk and Lacey and that whole stuff. Where do you guys see? You kind of covered some possible like people of where you might in the early days, but like from where you're at now, post pandemic potentials. Is there anybody you see maybe working with you? Anybody that has that caliber that fits? So
it's very interesting that you say that. Like we had the little bit with Vander, obviously, in February of last year, where Crystal couldn't make the show due to unforeseen circumstances, which we don't need to get into. No. But that happened. It's funny because we did that show, and then literally the following day, we ended up doing a Curd show. And Crystal was there as well as Vander was there. Yeah. And it was funny because Courage kind of piggybacked off of what you guys did the day before and ended up kind of putting Vander with us in that battle royal.
But you had already ditched him the previous night.
It was really weird. So like, I know Courage is looking to like kind of do the same thing and wants kind of an expansion. And like, we've been kind of looking into that as it is already, because as you mentioned already, we expanded from not just being a tag team, but into a faction. And with a faction comes a few more members, not NWO style, but like, you know, there's going to be a couple people that get added. There's no secret about it. In terms of anybody in particular, sure. Am I going to divulge that information on here? Probably not. There is definitely some people in mind. I think, and you kind of ran into it with like the roster with PWO, like with the pandemic, there's been some halts in a lot of what we've had planned as a faction. Like, fuck, we wanted to do some traveling. Like, we wanted to go to the States. We wanted to really break out, man. Like,
definitely.
There's a lot of wrestling, or there was, I should say, a lot of wrestling prior to the pandemic, and we wanted to be a part of as much of that as possible. Now it's going to be very interesting to see how a lot of these companies recover from the pandemic in Ontario in specific.
Definitely.
I know there's companies running, closed tapings, whether it's, through Rip's Gym, or I've seen a bit through Battle Arts. Others shit too as well. Like we've done the Compound Showdown.
I think like Super Kick does some tapings and stuff.
There you go. Yeah, they have stuff on their YouTube every week as well. So it's like there's places doing content still, but there's no actual legitimate shows going on. There was a couple that ran during the pandemic. Shout out to like places like NSW, and I genuinely can't remember who else ran, but Alpha One did a couple of shows as well.
Like they had up the outside show in Oshawa.
Like, so like there's been a couple of shows, but I'm talking in terms of like, you look at the Germania Club, Are we ever going to see that looking the way it was prior to the pandemic ever again? I don't know.
It's like, honestly, that's the tough part. It's like, who's going to weather the storm? And not even that, out of the venues too, right? Because it's like, are half these businesses or buildings or rental halls or bars or whatever, are they going to survive?
Yeah. And that's exactly kind of what I've been like really processing. And I think that's what brought me to Twitch, honestly, and doing a lot of this stuff is like starting to really connect with people more, just in case, like, say, I can't do this at the merch table and fucking interact with people the way we used to, or like I can't fucking slap hands and talk shit on the way to the ring the way I used to because of the way the pandemic works. Like there's all these different factors that I think of something small like spitting in somebody's face for heat and like, motherfucker, that ain't happening anymore.
Right. Well, even to like take that turn too, like spitting is like on that low end of the spectrum, and that's like a no. So it's like, what do you like when it comes to like different things, when like we talked about earlier with like the hardcore spots or the barbed wire or anything that's involved blood in public with like 100 people there, like that can't fly. Like, obviously, if there's an accident, you get busted open the hard way, the ref's going to have, you know what I mean? Like, you're going to have to, like, but you're going to have a lot more stuff on hand, which everybody should really have in the first place. Like, every show that we've run, we have, like, we have our cleaners, we have our gloves, like the whole 9 yards for those spills or anything that accidentally happens. But yeah, like, it's something that's going to have to not happen on purpose for a long time.
Yeah.
Like at this level, right? Because it's not
that's
like
exactly
this.
it.
You're not AEW, you're not WWE. You don't have a barricade, and you're not pushed back in cages and behind plexiglass. Like, you're in a small room, so you can't do that.
There's only so much of a budget, and like I had this conversation with my fiance of like, I don't know how many companies are going to be able to make it just because of like a lot of these promotions are relying on the ticket money and the IWTV money and all this stuff that adds up, where a lot of that revenue has been taken away because of the pandemic. So
absolutely,
I've been preparing myself already. Like my shoot job now, I'm working in the cannabis industry and like the booming industry right now. I'm doing this Twitch stuff. Like I'm really trying to set myself up just in case for some reason the way pro wrestling was before doesn't come back.